Hello everyone. This is the part 2 of previous part. This is episode 2, second part, and now we are continuing with some more questions. We will be dealing the questions with the workflow, the practical and the real one. How do you start an environment from scratch?
First and foremost, when you have an environment to start off, there are few things that is kept in mind. Number one is reference gathering. So you go to Pinterest and then you pick up as much reference as you need. You should have uh, all sorts of categories in your reference gathering. So I generally use PureRef. It's very easy and handy tool to use. Go to Pinterest, drag and drop those things that you like. So especially you should start with a category called lighting. Then you should have another category of props. Then you should have color. Basically, what other color tones that you'll be using in your environment. Then you should have um, if it's a big environment, like what daytime, nighttime, what kind of a time it's showing. Then if it's a stylized environment or a real life, AAA style real kind of environment, so you need to pick up those kind of references. Like you should also have references of close up things, like probably if you have like a very hero object. Okay, like it could be something like a gun, it could be something like a very fancy sci-fi car.
Hmm.
So you should have all these references beforehand before starting anything. So that is how there is a whole reference gathering that needs to be done before starting any project. So once you have done that, then comes your second part where you're actually opening Unity or Unreal Engine or Maya, whichever. I prefer Maya if I'm doing a small scale environment where I have my grid and the grid is marked in meters. Always start in meters, and you have a default Unreal Engine dude, or maybe any FBX you can find free. You can just drag and drop that, and that becomes your scale. That is your
Hmm.
6 feet height human scale. So now
Hmm.
everything gets built according to that. So sometimes what happens is not all, everything will be like for humans. Like maybe you're making a game for bugs or ants, or the scale is very different kind of proportions. So how do you deal with that? That's when you take the hero character of your game and then you build according to that scale, so that you always have a relative idea of how big or small those things are going to be.
Hmm.
So once you have your scale, then your next thing is going to be your blockout. Basically, you take cubes, uh, cylinder, all your primitive shapes, right? Use any primitive shapes, cuboids, use those, and then try to build like a white box structure. It is either done by an environment artist, or sometimes it's done by a level designer. So if it's a level, then it'll be the level designer's work to actually make from start point A to point B, and the entire design the entire thing just with cubes. Okay, so
Hmm.
that is also a blockout. If you do not have a level designer working with you, you have to do it all on your own. Then you can also do the same thing. Just add cubes and then
Hmm.
rotate the camera, go up and down, run with the character, see how it feels, see how relative those things are. Basically, you can, if you want like a a structure, like, and then you have trees, so you place those trees instead of trees, you place long cubes, cuboids. So after placing those, you can actually get a feel. I mean, very 5 to 10% of what you're going to make. So if you're happy with that, go ahead and then start replacing those blocks with actual models. So you make one model and you place it, and then you put your textures and you check how it looks. Say so, like this, you will have a list of 20-30 models to do, or you will be needing like trees, your rocks, or if your house, if you're making a house, modular pieces. So you need to plan out those things, and then once you have done that, you come to Unreal Engine, and then you place one by one, and then slowly building. I call it like, Lego building, like how you make those Lego blocks. So it's pretty much the same thing when it comes to making environment from scratch. Like I explained the whole thing almost kind of, but this is are the very first initial steps to make an environment basically.
When you start referencing, like reference gathering, and first, like you start with the blockout. So
Mhm.
my second question will be on top of this. After the blockout is complete, so how do you start increasing the details?
Once the blockout is complete, you will have concept artist who is giving you a paint over. Basically, for them, they just need scale perspective. Okay, so they are going to take that cube which the level designer or you have done, which is a simple block. Okay, so whatever next they are going to make, right? It'll be given from all sorts of perspective, all the perspective views. Now, it is the work of the concept artist to actually paint whatever comes in that block. So if you don't have a painter like concept artist who's doing that, then you have to figure out what comes in that block, what replaces that block with an actual model. So that's when you start making those models. So then
Hmm.
that model could be either a wall, it could be a gate, it could be like, if it's a gate you have to use only one gate, but if it's like a wall, then you have to like decide what kind of a wall. Like because you can make a bunch of modular walls, and then you can just use them from all different sides, and then stack them to make your house. So it depends on what kind of a model you're making. So if it's a high detailed gate, then you can just model it, ZBrush, high paint, like poly paint it in ZBrush. Make sure you have your high definition mesh going from there. Then you bake it in Substance Painter, and then you can just throw it in Unreal Engine, and that's it. That's done. Or you can then make trim sheets, or you can make modular pieces. These are like two basic things that would be required to make modular assets, which can be twisted, turned, rotated, and then used in a lot of number of ways. So that is your way of doing your detail models. So now it depends on what exactly you're making. It is up to you to exactly choose the right pipeline for the right object. So that is how it's done when you want to do detailed models.
So, like, what do you say? How important is the reference collection for every environment?
I would say if you, it's like if your reference collection is your drawing board,
Mm.
where you have an itinerary plan. Like imagine if you're going for a holiday, which is a planned holiday, right? So from in that 5 days you have like maybe 35 things to do, but then you would need a proper itinerary, or you would get an itinerary from the guide that Monday morning we are going to do this, then in the evening we'll do this, in the night we'll do this. So you will have a guide. Okay, these are like the set of things that needs to be done. Similarly, when you're doing your environments, you will need to have till the last bits of details every object planned. Like what are your rocks going to look like, what are your trees going to look like, what sort of a weather condition you're trying to show. Is it an island, is it a desert, is it a city, what time of day is it, so what kind of art style is it, are you going to use any fancy shaders? What are you kind of going with any kind of very, borderland sort of post process, or are you going to go with Riot Games kind of art style, or if you're going with Call of Duty kind of an art style, which is very, you know, realistic. So it depends on these. So you make a whole collection of all these small details. Like every detail matters. So the more you have detailed out these things, and you have gathered the references, that is going to be easier in your next half of creating the environment. So your first thing would be like actually noting down the bunch of things that you need. Second is find those reference images. Third is like modeling and texturing those images, those actual models, and then putting it in your environment, Unreal Engine or Unity, wherever.
And whichever things you like you're modeling inside the environment, whether it's a building or the mountain or anything. So
Yeah.
how do you keep the scale and proportions correct?
So to do this, it's a very simple trick. Always work in meters, no matter which you're going with, Blender or Maya or whatever.
And also
Uh,
one thing like on top of
yeah.
this, suppose you are like you are modeling something or creating any kind of environment which it's like difficult to measure like what will be the units. Suppose like you are
Uh,
creating something like which belong to space. So how would you deal with that?
so if it's a space object, you will have your for scale you will have spaceship.
Hmm.
So there is always some unit of measurement, like even like for example space, which can't be measured, right? But how
Hmm.
do you show your scale? Your player is going to have a screen. They won't be in space, so their object is going to be in space. So either they'll be an astronaut, or they will be a spaceship itself, or they will be some satellite. I don't know,
Hmm.
like whatever. So for that one prop you will need to have a scale, but when it comes to these kind of things in Unreal Engine, this also is worked upon meters itself. So now your game character, which is probably a spaceship, that spaceship is then made in actual real proportions, which is probably um, 5 meters by 5 meters, 30 meters by 30 meters, whatever. Okay,
Hmm.
so that is then put inside Unreal Engine, and then the whole world is created according to that scale. So now if one thing becomes small or big, relatively everything is also scaled up or scaled down, which is like sometimes it's a very an art director's call to take, but mostly it happens in that way where you have one basic thing where
Hmm.
which goes around everywhere. So you make that one thing in meters, and then you make the rest of the thing in that scale, using that scale as an object.
So like after getting the perfect scale and correct proportions, and you also model the props and all which are there to be placed in the inside the environment. So at what stage do you start lighting and texturing?
I would say once you have like created a blockout, right? You
Hmm.
can immediately put a sun. It barely takes 5 seconds. So you put a sun, and your no need of post process volume and all that. Just skylight, directional light, and sky atmosphere. All those two three things that are there. You just put that, and then let it happen. Okay, and then you set up cameras, camera 1 2 3 4, like from different angles where you want to keep seeing the environment. And then once you have already established your lighting, then you can iterate it later on, but then you
Hmm.
can use those lights as use those lights to see how your texture reacts.
Hmm.
So when you're done with making some, basically you'll have wood, metal, and stone. These are the three most basic things that goes in every game. Okay,
Hmm.
so you create a wood. You see what kind of color works with that sunlight. What kind of a number one would be color. One then would be normal map. Then you have your specular or roughness map. Then you have your metallic map. So all these maps come together to make that object look real or stylized, whatever. So it is a combination of these maps. These combination of maps can be seen only when you have a little bit of light in the scene. That can be a
Hmm.
very basic light, but that has to be there. If that is not there, then you will not know what values your texture is being created at and how it looks in real time in sunlight, so directional light. So that is very important to have like very little bit of lighting before you are going to the next stage of modeling and texturing. So when you have your models ready, you put it in the environment and you can check directly how your model looks like. So that is why it is important to have your light set up in the initial stages itself. Then iterations will keep happening. So once you have your light blockout with the light, then you give those blockouts to your 2D artist. Then they would make a concept, and then you take that concept, make it a 3D thing. First you go Maya and ZBrush and Painter, maybe Photoshop if needed. All that three things are done, then that model and these textures come together inside Unreal Engine using a material, and then you put that entire thing in your level with the light, and then you check how it looks. So that is the exact way of going forward with any environment for that matter.
So, for this part, these were all five questions. And for the audience part, like we have decided to keep every video will include the five chapters. So, thank you so much, sir, for joining me again. We'll keep uploading something so that newer ones, which whoever wants to become game artist, will get educated and will receive the right knowledge and guidance. So, thank you
Yes,
so much, sir, for giving your time.
you're welcome.
Every heartbeat, but not owned. Memento mori. Remember, you'll die. No throne survives, no soul denies. Memento mori. No chosen, no cure. The end is equal. The truth is sure.